Hello, I am Interweb Studios. In this video we will hear how someone got revenge on their roommate by getting it on with their partner. I have no idea how that happened, but stick around to hear other revenge stories regarding significant others. With that, sit back and enjoy. I don't think this counts as petty, but I consider it some very sweet revenge. I had this roommate in college, we will call her Jessica, and while living in the dorms we were best friends. We spent most of our evenings together and overall we had no problems, just besties, you know. Well, fast forward 2 years, we weren't in the dorms anymore and I was about to move in with my childhood best friend, her boyfriend, and we needed another roommate. I thought, great, I'll ask Jessica. So we all are living together and at first, it was great. She and I were still friends, hung out a lot, no problems. And then small things started happening. She started using my makeup without asking. She'd invite me to a party, I'd get ready and sit out and wait for her, and she'd forget and fall asleep without telling me. She'd take my dab oil, etc. Then things got worse. She allowed her boyfriend to move in without asking us. She also basically stopped paying rent, almost getting us evicted 4 times, all the while bragging and showing off her expensive nails, and spending money on alcohol and party drugs. She'd come in at like 4 in the morning and loudly do the dishes while we were asleep. I had 9 a.m. classes. She would constantly set off our fire alarms by blowing vape clouds right at the detectors, again, in the middle of the night. Jessica was also a compulsive liar, especially to her mother and family who sent her money, which we almost never saw a penny of. We stopped hanging out, obviously, and I had begun to despise her. Well, her boyfriend, who I initially hated, thinking he was freeloading and very annoying, ended up wanting to hang out with myself and my other roommates when we would have game nights. They weren't his biggest fan still, but we had a lot in common so I warmed up. He'd stay up and watch me play video games or watch shows while drinking. Nothing weird, we just became friends. Jessica hated that. She would come out at like 8 p.m. and demand he came to bed with her, which he normally wouldn't, and when he did they would get into massive fights where she would accuse him of cheating with me. Ironically, she actually ended up cheating on him. I was there to comfort him and help him through the breakup. So we ended up hanging out more, which eventually became hooking up, and while yes, we were both attracted to each other at that point, we mostly started having sex to piss her off and boy did it work. She was furious. We had to block her on just about everything because she'd message him constantly and harass him about it. However, we caught feelings, started dating, got engaged, and now are happily married. Needless to say, Jessica wasn't all too happy for us, but I don't care because I couldn't be happier. I love him more than anything. What started as revenge sex turned into a wonderful relationship. Edit. Alright, there was some confusion and comments I'd like to clear up. The people I moved in with initially were my childhood best friend and her boyfriend. Jessica's boyfriend, my now husband, moved in with us a little bit later. In regard to him freeloading, we didn't like him at first so he didn't talk to us initially, which meant we didn't know that he was actually the one paying Jessica's share of rent when it got bad, and she'd only tell him about how bad it was when the rental agency called her repeatedly about it. I didn't learn that he was paying until nearly 2 months after they'd broken up. As for moving on too soon, we hooked up, sure, but we didn't start officially dating for around 5-6 months as we figured that he was probably rebounding and didn't have a basis for a relationship initially. After that we dated for a year and were engaged for 3 years before we got married. We did not invite her to the wedding lol, but we did find out that she had planned to crash it anyway. We had a very small and private wedding due to COVID restrictions. Down in the comments.
How awkward is it to answer the age-old question of how did you two meet? This is why I refuse to get a roommate again. Eventually they will date someone, that's fine, and then their partner will be overweight too much to the point that I now have a 3rd roommate living with me for free. Not fine. I have 3 roommates and I was worried reading your comment, then I remembered we're all computer science engineering students so no risk.
Not my story, but a family friend's story. I knew this lovely German lady who I will call Heidi. Not real name. She was married to an Israeli man who I'll call Douche. Douche was a douche for a number of reasons. He worked with my dad in IT, who said he had a hero complex where he would cause disasters at work and then try to be the hero and save the day. We even suspect he caused a huge IT disaster at our national airport while he was working there. He was also really creepy. He creeped on my younger sister, calling her randomly and asking to pick her up. He was the exact opposite of his wife, who was lovely and sweet and charismatic, and I have no idea how they ended up together. Unfortunately, a while after we made friends with them, Heidi got very sick. Her colon stopped working, she almost died. Thankfully she was in a country with stellar healthcare who saved her life, but she found out she has Crohn's disease, and she had to get a colostomy bag. While she was recovering from her surgery, Douche announced he wanted to divorce. His words were, and I quote, "I didn't marry a sick woman. Ducking prick." He left her high and dry, and very soon was seeing someone else. He lost all the friends he had made in our country with his awful behavior. My family told him he was no longer welcome near us as we were there for Heidi. He finally fecked off back to Israel. Apparently he had got into quite a bit of debt while in my country, and skipped off to avoid paying. Good riddance, we all said. Heidi found her feet eventually. She took up photography, and went to university to study it. She did very well for herself, and lived a happy life free from Douche. After about a year, Douche contacted Heidi and she told us all about it. Apparently he was trying to sweet talk her into going over to Israel to go through with the divorce proceedings. According to Heidi, your marital status is on your identity card in Israel, and it's one of the first things a girl asks to see when you go on a date. When the girls saw he was married on his card, they'd never go for a second date. So every time he'd call her asking when she was coming over, she'd put a huge shit-eating grin on and reply, "Oh, I don't know. I'm not really in a position to fly with my condition and all. Maybe when I get better." She knew full well he won't set foot back here because his creditors were still looking for their money back. She would just relish in the knowledge that he was getting rejected by all those women he was pursuing in Israel while she chilled with us having a great time. Heidi is doing much better now. She went back to Germany, though still visits my family and her friends from time to time. She's still her awesome self. I don't know what Douche is up to now, but I suspect after all these years he is still a douche. Down in the comments.
This is beautiful. Typically in Israel, due to really messed up marriage laws, the husband can refuse divorce and it becomes a whole thing where the wife is stuck in this situation where she can't remarry or even really date. It's kind of poetic that it's going the other way this time. Side note, if she wants to be even more petty, it would be a terrible shame if she told the creditors about where he lives now. Even more shameful if they file a lawsuit in Israel where the debt gets pulled immediately from his bank account. Okay, so I'm not married, but isn't through sickness and health typically part of the vows? If she's sick for more than 15 minutes, you're legally allowed to leave.
Oh, this is the perfect place for this little story. My significant other had a double life. He had a girlfriend that thought she was in a full-blown relationship when he practically lived with me. She thought I was getting in the way of their love story, so she contacted me to give me the what's up. For context, I knew nothing about her. Unfortunately, she was the side chick who believed that coming to his place for 1-2 hours once a week to give him sexual favors was a legit relationship. When she contacted me to try to tell me to stay away from her mans, I called him and he freaked out. I told him it was either her or me. He cried and pleaded and told me he can't live without me. I made him dump her on the phone in front of me. I then turned around and dumped him. That was 100% always my plan, lol. Down in the comments.
Yeah, second chances only make these people think that they should be careful the next time. My ex-neighbors recently 5 years ago got divorced after 47 years of marriage. Why? Because she discovered, after 47 years of marriage, that he had an entire other family. And had had that other family for 40 years. 2 kids with family number 1, 3 kids with family number 2. Naturally, during the divorce, she got everything. He got family number 2. I will never understand these situations. I can't even juggle one family with 2 kids, Also, how do you sneak away long enough to take care of either of them long enough without setting off some kind of red flag? I can kind of see an attempt that lasts a year but an entire lifetime. That's crazy. He was some kind of traveling consultant, so he was home a week away a week. Plus, he told wife number one that his vets group he served in Vietnam built some sort of recovery retreat house on a nearby lake, and he worked with vets who had PTSD or whatever at the lake house. These two things allowed him to be away for long stretches. Wife number two knew about wife number one, so he didn't need another cover story for her. What's most amusing to me was that he'd tell wife number one about wife number two, but using a fictitious husband, Bob. Wife number two was named Betty, I'm making names up here, and her first two daughters were Olive and Brianna. So, B.O.B. Betty, Olive, Brianna. So he'd tell wife how his friends Bob and Betty took the girls to the state fair, or Bob and Betty got a new sofa set. Or Bob and Betty spent the weekend painting the kitchen. But he was Bob, do you understand? 40 years telling wife number one about Bob and Betty. Ducking sociopath, this guy.
It was one of those half-assed, gotta clear my conscience, texts. He literally said he did not care if I just ignored it lol. He dumped me last year right after I spent a month moving him and helping him get settled in a new city. I had cooked, cleaned, planned things to do, helped him figure out job problems, etc. For an entire month. 2 weeks later, he calls me out of nowhere and breaks up with me. He treated me like shit after that, emotionally dumping on me and treating me like a doormat. He treated me like shit during our relationship, too. But he was super subtle about it. And after all that, he opens up his apology with, I'm not asking you to take me back. The arrogance and audacity. So, I'm editing his apology. Instead of, I'm sorry for how things went between us, he gets, I would like to apologize for how everything went down between us, but I will only say that and that alone because I still refuse to take accountability for my actions and acknowledge my role in hurting you. Instead of, you can ignore this if you want, he gets, feel free to ignore this because I don't really care about your feelings. I just felt like saying this to clear my own conscience despite still taking zero responsibility for the harm I inflicted upon you. I wrote the whole thing like that. I'm ruminating on it to make sure I didn't miss anything. How kind of him to give me the opportunity for my petty revenge. Down in the comments.
Just a simple get back to me when you learn how to actually apologize. If it was a long apology, I am a fan of the response K. Please make sure all corrections are in red, just like a teacher to a petulant child. Otherwise he may not even understand what you did.
And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe and comment what you would have done in each scenario down below. Until next time, toodles.